dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life.
Welcome to Dungeon Master of None.
Today, we're talking about the Netflix original series, The Witcher.
The Witcher.
2009. And we're both... 2019. Well, listen, when Ciri, the lion cub of Sintra, enters the Tower of Swallows, she gains the ability to travel back and forth in time. So, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. So, by the way, if you are tired of Witcher and Witcher-related content, I know we did one on the Witcher RPG, and we've discussed it a lot. Sorry, one, but not sorry. Two,
we really like The Witcher, so fuck you.
We like The Witcher. We will discuss things that are valuable to people in general, even if you are not a fan. So feel free to listen, but also at the end of the episode, we'll be answering some letters. So don't worry, Witcher haters, there is something for everybody.
One of our mantras is you can steal from almost anything.
Yes. And I encourage you to steal from The Witcher.
From Citizen Kane to Citizens United.
Which, as much as I love The Witcher, has a bunch of great ideas in a adequate package, so I strongly encourage you to borrow the things that you like and use them for your own campaign, and we will discuss what I mean by that as we get further. So we'll talk about The Witcher, and we'll answer some letters. We wanted to discuss The Witcher specifically because it's such an important inspiration for so many new fantasy properties and people who are playing in the RPG space, because it's been kind of a big deal of late, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, to set the tone, right, it's been a long time, really since the introduction of Game of Thrones, that we've had a new fantasy series that was both beloved by fans and received some amount, though The Witcher much less so, of critical acclaim, right?
So if
not only is it a fantasy series, right, it's like the best-selling RPG of like the decade, right? I don't know, maybe Fallout's bigger, but
it's up there. It's a really great. It's not just like a great selling game, but a culturally impactful. Gamers who game have played The Witcher 3, The Wild Hunt, and they know all about it. And you know, if you didn't watch, Matt makes a good point here. If you didn't watch the abysmal 2-season Legend of the Seeker television show based on the Sword of Truth novels, or the equally abysmal Shannara series based on the sort of Shannara books, both, by the way, if you go back and read them, do not hold up very well.
Right. This is the problem with these two TV shows, is the source material was written by one was written by a dude who was like, man, I really like Tolkien. And the other was written by the weirdest libertarian you've ever met.
The weirdest libertarian with an explicit BDSM fetish that he wasted almost no time in putting directly into the book. I'm sorry. I already got called out for this on the podcast. It's not BDSM because it's not consensual. Whatever. Torture porn. He likes torture porn, and he puts it in every single book. He has an entire magical class of people that just torture people with phallic pain objects. Anyway, the point is,
I think the difference is
sorry,
The Witcher,
let me finish my point, Matt. The point was,
okay,
if you didn't watch either of these things, The Witcher is basically like the first real significant within
fantasy.
A sort of fantasy television show, and it's good. Okay, there's some disagreement. It's not bad, right? I think it's good. Matt and I think it's both think it's good, but
I think it's great, honestly.
But it definitely isn't bad. It's not schlocky. It's not lazy. It's not, poorly done. The acting is totally adequate for what it is. So this is significant, and it's a wild departure from Game of Thrones in a lot of ways that we'll talk about, which I think is critically important because, dear God, do we have to get away from Game of Thrones? As much as I love it, it has dictated a lot about how
what fantasy is what it can be
perceived. So that's why we're talking about The Witcher. We think it's important for world building and playing RPGs in a fantasy setting, and just hopefully getting more television shows about fantasy.
Yeah. The difference here is the source material, the the Polish novels and short stories that The Witcher is based off actually hold up okay. They're not the best piece of writing ever, but there's some translation issues as well that I'm sure don't allow me to adequately judge them, but they're pretty darn good. And beyond that, they got in a brilliant team of showrunners and writers who understood the source material and wrote some really good scripts.
It honestly, like, it does, I think it really, like, does a great job with what is, you know, it's not bad source material, but it's aged. It's certainly not cutting edge, but they managed to turn it into a Netflix series that doesn't feel dated and deals with complicated issues without, like, bludgeoning you over the head with it. There are women speaking to women. There are people of color. You know, there's a minimum of sexual violence. You know, it's honestly, like, astonishingly not offensive in a lot of ways while still being, like, a pretty, like, grim, dark fantasy show, which I think is super important to demonstrate. It's you don't have to include a violent rape scene or whatever in the first 2 episodes to establish that this is real fantasy for grown-ups. You know, it's However, I did count. There are the time from the start of the episode to the first breast is about I think exactly 10 minutes. Right. So that showed great restraint on part of the
TTB is very short.
It's very short. Do with that what you will, but generally it does a pretty good job with it trying to walk a complicated tightrope.
So I think talking about the adapting something, and we're always as Dungeon Masters trying to think of adapting ideas from books and TV shows, but adapting from the books to the show, they did, I think, a really great job of. They basically adapted 4 of the short stories from the first book of short stories from The Witcher, plus 1 from the second book. They skipped over one of the short stories of the first book, but then because the short stories are in the books are mostly at the beginning told from Geralt's perspective and not from Yennefer's or Ciri's, though their perspective comes in as the plot comes together, the show had to go back and do a little new stuff to kind of tell Yennefer's backstory, right?
Yeah. So let's talk about this. So there's a couple of things that are significant about the show. And so the one thing I think we should address first is the time skips, right?
Yeah, time skips.
So in case you are aware, and I don't think it's a spoiler, and I think honestly everyone should be aware of this going in, but the show jumps around. And it's, if you're paying attention, pretty clear what's happening when and like what the like current timeline is, but it can be a little disorienting if you're not paying attention. So just be aware that in order to solve the complicated issue of telling multiple stories that sort of come together at different points, the show tells at the same time, or shows events at the same time that are happening many, many years apart. So I think this works. I think this is great. I greatly prefer it to flashbacks. I'm so very tired of flashbacks as a storytelling tool, and I think that if Yennefer showed up in episode 6 or whatever, and then half the episode was a flashback about her childhood, that would just suck. So this is substantially better.
Yeah, and it has for the characters, it has the advantage of, for example, Yennefer and Ciri, like they are in the books, are fully developed characters that have motivations and inner lives of their own, separate from Geralt, which if you didn't do that, it would, in a television show, it would lend itself to that. And that's definitely not what you want, thinking about the plot going forward, knowing, as some of us do who've read the books, right, how important Ciri and Yennefer are.
And it means that when they come and they finally meet Geralt, which for Ciri happens, I think, like the literally last scene of the show, season 1, but it's very exciting because you can see the way that their stories are intertwined, even though they haven't actually met, and you're excited to see like how those relationships develop.
fun bit of trivia. So there was a Polish version of this show, which was very low budget and not very good. But they sort of shot this kind of scene at the end of the first season. And so when the author of the books, Andrew Sapkowski, was consulting on this, when he wrote one of his collections of short stories, he went back and sort of added a short story that describes basically the final episode of The Witcher, or the last thing. And then it got added to the books, and now it's part of this show.
It's amazing stuff. The Hexer, as the Polish version of The Witcher is called, is truly a masterpiece of... I mean, it's not like substantially worse than Xena, Warrior Princess, or Hercules,
Right.
Except lower budget.
A lot, and less Sorbo.
Less Sorbo, though. The guy who plays The Witcher is an incredibly Polish-looking man, and just the most Polish-looking people. The dwarves look great because they're Polish. Like they just, it's like a dead-on, mustachioed. Just anyway, watch like. I think there's like collections or like a trailer. Just enjoy a brief journey down the Polish Witcher lane. One thing I will say is that everybody's uglier, which is probably like more accurate. But honestly, this is TV, right? We want to watch pretty people do pretty things. I refuse to apologize for a good-looking Witcher. So the
Polish TV show, I think in the like first or second episode, starts with Geralt being turned into a Witcher, because the Polish TV show thinks you have to explain everything right from the beginning.
Well, sure.
Which, how will you know what a Witcher is if you don't show a little boy being, transformed?
And this is
the Trial of Grasses.
This is great because the Netflix series does not do this. And
fuck you. You don't get to understand everything.
It treats
from the
viewers.
That's fine.
Treats the viewers like they're adults who can figure things out on their own. And I guess it remains to be seen whether or not this works. But like, at no point do they explain what a Witcher is, how you become a Witcher. They allude to it, But there's no scene where, Geralt is shown, going through the trial. You don't even see.
Vesemir.
You don't even see Vesemir at all. I think you hear his voice in like one of the very last episodes, but that's it. And I think this is a great touch. I don't know. I know that like modern audiences are used to being like spoon-fed shit, and so like maybe this is a big turnoff for people who aren't big fantasy watchers. But from what I understand, The Witcher was very popular and like very like well received, and a lot of people watched it and enjoyed it, including people who
well, there was like a E! Online review that was like The Witcher sucks coming out the first day.
I remember that.
And
Whatever.
Someone noticed the reviewers like I watched the first episode and then the 5th episode.
I think it did very well. We should talk about that, Matt, because here's before, if you are on the fence about the Witcher Netflix series and haven't watched it yet, let me provide a word of warning. First episode, not great. There are parts of it that are very good. It's a little expository. The time jumps are probably the worst in this episode because, I don't know, major spoilers, but like a big part of the first episode is the fall of Sintra, which there's no reason why you should give a shit about this, because you don't know who any of these people are. You've had no time to get used to the badass queen and her horny husband, or Ciri, or anybody.
Great characters,
really,
by
the
way.
thing is, I
right?
was like
so much complex depth.
I was so
these
like
heroes.
I did not care because, unlike Matt, I haven't read the books, so but like as the show progressed, I got sad retroactively because of how amazing these characters were. And I know why they did this, and I don't know that I would have done anything differently, but it is not great. It's just not the best first episode. As you watch, it becomes much more rewarding, but I can see why this is a roadblock for a lot of people. Yeah.
The time thing it can be difficult, but when it comes together, it makes it all the more satisfying.
I feel like by like the third episode, I was like, oh, I get this. This is starting to like really like work for me. But it is a lot to ask for the first, you know.
And they made an interesting decision here. The first episode, and now I think we're going to have to get into some pretty substantial spoilers territory, is that Geralt, this is the story based on, it's called The Lesser Evil. Geralt is stuck between Stregobor, a very powerful wizard, and Renfri, a mutant that can basically charm people, and may one day bring about the apocalypse or something.
Unclear.
Who knows? Unclear.
Stregobor seems to think so, but
yeah, everyone seems to think Stregobor is an asshole, and they're correct.
Right. But Stregobor may also be right about, I don't know, the apocalypse. Who knows? We don't know.
It's great, and it's a great moral ambiguity, and it sort of sets the tone for Geralt's worldview and, you know, his quest. This is a departure from how the books introduce the character, which is the short story based on the Striga and the Incest King, and
which is
you know, the sort of big
great
fight.
episode, and I think like an incredible standalone story. I think it like really like tells like.
Well, this was the first story published, and this is what launched it. It was like, people are like, oh, shit, this story is so good. Keep writing these, please, Andrew Sapkowski.
I didn't know that, but it makes sense, because it's just like, it's such like a beautiful encapsulation of monsters, of Geralt, of the world that he inhabits.
Curses.
Yeah, it's a, that's like the second episode, right? I believe or the third episode where.
Second or third episode,
Striga, which is, anyway, we'll get to that. But, yeah, so I know why they started where they did. It's also helpful for Geralt to become the Butcher of Blaviken right away, and for also you to get to understand why he's like very reluctant to get involved, to do violence to people, unless like really, you know, he wants to. It's also, look, this is not like a sophisticated take, but it's I never really get tired of it. But like, you know, The Witcher is all about, you know, actually, the real bad guy is man. You know, it's the real underlying thing is, yeah, sure, there are monsters, but you know who's really evil? It's man. You know, it's people. People are bad. And honestly,
it's a Twilight Zone take, but it's a good one.
It's, you know, it's a Twilight Zone ass take, end of Futurama joke, but it's a good one. It's not really one that I think can get like too overemphasized. So I never really get tired of watching shows or reading books with this as the central theme.
I have combined the DNA of the world's most evil animals to make the most evil creature of them all.
It turns out it's man.
Right. Humans have really fucked up this continent, right, that was once inhabited by gnomes and then maybe dwarves and elves and halflings, and they're sort of, you know, things are going to shit.
Nymphs and sylvans and all sorts of wonderful natural creatures, and now they are all in hiding or starving or, you know, turned savage. You know, it's bad.
And the first episode, before we move on from it, also does something that's really great, which gives us, I think, some of the coolest fantasy battle sword fighting scenes that I think I have ever seen. It really made me, you know, I think us fantasy nerds, when we saw Oberyn Martell fight the Mountain or something, we're like, wow, this is cool. Fuck that shit.
No,
this is cool.
That was good, but the sword fights in the first episode put it to shame. It is a masterpiece of fight choreography. Yeah.
And one of the little things I noticed that they didn't have to do is, like, in the short story, you know, there's this tense standoff between Geralt and all these ruffians that Renfri has recruited to her side, and it's so incredibly accurate to the book how that fight goes down, even down to the fact that the guy who has a crossbow aimed at Geralt is a half-elf. Like, they didn't have to include that detail, but he is. And I'm like, goddamn.
It is obvious that the creators of the show were fans of The Witcher. And I think this is important, by the way. I want to stop and like talk about.
I don't think D&D, the Weiss or whatever men were ever really fans of the books of Game of Thrones. And that's a big difference.
No, Benioff and Weiss were not fans. They said they read them, or part of them, but I'm not convinced that they did. They were clearly not.
I feel like they paid people to read them.
They were clearly not fans,
them.
and I think this is really, really important. Because you can tell the difference, right? You can tell when the people making a show, even if it's a bad show, if they really like loved the source material. A great example of this is Battlefield Earth, which is one of the worst movies ever made. But you can tell that there was passion and love behind that. Yes. And the problem was that it was a Scientology textbook and not that like the people didn't care. You have to combine good source material with passion, but this also Henry Cavill is a fan by his own admission.
Yeah,
he brought everything to the role, which was not a lot because he's not a great actor, but it was everything that he needed to be Geralt, who is supposed to be sort of like stone-faced and just a tough dude who says fuck. Oh, also extremely good use of fuck in this show. Limited use of fuck, but very effective.
And speaking of dialogue, one of the other things is this show, like the books, and this may be a translation problem with the books, does not give one iota about making sure its language is like fantasy appropriate. In episode 2 or 3, they say behind the curve, which is an incredibly modern expression. And you know what? I don't care.
And they're right to do so, because when you're trying to like do fake fantasy speech, it's just like, I don't know, you're just like inheriting the idea of what it should sound like from what some 19th century asshole thought they talked like in the high Middle Ages. Don't bother. Make your speech authentic. You know, have people talk like how they would talk. Definitely have them say fuck, especially if they're peasants or, you know, common folk. I also...
You sure you don't want them to say Thor's beard?
I mean, if there are no gods, don't say, you know, God bless you. But like otherwise, you know, don't go out of your way to... Yeah, this is an extremely good point. I also... I could you know, talk about like what I love about this. I do just love when shows do subvert tropes. And what's great, this happens a ton in the first episode, but Geralt does not give a shit about any of the things that you were supposed to give a shit about. He doesn't give a shit about prophecies. He doesn't give a shit about like hierarchies.
The world ending.
Yeah, you know, when he's talking to Stregobor, you know, Stregobor is droning on about, look, I'm somebody who loves little exposition, but even I was like, oh, Stregobor, shut the fuck up. About
please.
The Night of the Black Sun, and Geralt is like, it doesn't rhyme. All good prophecies rhyme. And it's like, it's such like, this happens in like every episode, and it's like such good shit. It's because it's like, the show doesn't take itself too seriously. It is, that's, I think.
Neither do the books.
And that's,
yet they have such great heart.
And remember, this is the one thing I did like from The Witcher RPG, was it was like, just because it's dark fantasy doesn't mean that there's no humor, right? That's, I think, a critical part of like a dark world, is that the people, like, they find humor in the moment, and they don't take themselves too seriously, because everything is fucked, you know, and the last thing you want to do is be like super like grim and dour about it all the goddamn time. And I love that about the show, which I think draws very heavily from the source
Let's talk about what were some of your high points of the show. What were some of your favorite sort of short vignette stories, favorite moments in the show?
Number one, top moment, toss a coin to your Witcher. The song absolutely slaps, fucking incredible, great music. I would listen to it on repeat all day. Great fucking song. Toss a coin to your Witcher. It's amazing.
Absolutely. The character of Dandelion or Jaskier also
Jaskier, incredible.
A
just
great
pitch perfect,
counterpoint.
incredible casting. The dude just killed it. My favorite part of the show, just flat out. Jaskier's incredible.
Yeah. A high point for me was seeing Yennefer's training and in Aretuza and the sort of introduction of dark Harry Potter school for young ladies. Like the scene where her mentor Tisea, who's great character by the way,
finishing school for fine young ladies who do magic and sometimes turn into eels. Yeah.
Right, sweep your friends into this pool as eels to power
sweep
our
your friends
Tuzas.
into this pool is just like such like a holy shit. This scene, yeah. A high point for me. I loved Yennefer's. It wasn't a standalone episode, but it was the one where she was being pursued by the sorcerer with the horrible bug, and that was just like such a good episode in general. And then like her scene on the beach with a dead baby just talking about stuff, just a really I just feel like you don't get stuff like that in fantasy very often, just not just from the perspective of women, but also just candid, straight up conversation, good monologue about just how shit the world is. It's just we already talked about this. I'm already a Yennefer fan, but it was just like she's just such a good character. I really liked that episode a lot.
Yeah, they did Yennefer good, I think. They actually found a way through that to explain, I think, a weakness of her character in the books, which is, she's pursuing sort of restoring her fertility in the books, and you can't ever really understand why. I think they did their best to try and make that.
It doesn't.
Make
I actually
sense.
wanted to talk about this because I really liked it. It doesn't make a ton of sense, though in the show they try to make it make sense, and I honestly like Yennefer is so great because she's so unapologetic that she came from nothing, right? She was less than nothing. She was a living in a pigsty. Her father sold her for a couple of crowns, right. And now she wants everything.
Of mongrel blood, according to the people here.
Power. She wants everything, and in a lot of people, that's like a horrifying, and it's horrifying in Yennefer as well. But you sympathize with her, right? You understand like why she won't accept anything less than everything, like all the power, the beauty, fertility, a baby of her own. Again, it's obviously like tragic and doomed to failure. She's obviously, a complicated and in many ways not a good person, but you understand,
Definitely not.
right? You understand and can even like her in some ways, despite the fact that she is quite sinister to others. I really liked this about the show. It is hard to do. The thing about The Witcher is that it does do, I don't like to say gray because I don't think that like black and white or gray characters is the right way to think about things, but like truly complex people it is something that The Witcher has always done well, and Yennefer is a great example of this. Yeah.
Building on complex characters, the next one that I really like is Calanthe, the queen of Sintra. She's introduced to you as, this
Calanthe.
badass warrior queen, and you're like, oh, cool. And then she's like, I gotta navigate these things. And then, you realize,
an awful,
being a
kind
queen
of unlikable person
involves
at points.
incredible violence, especially a warrior queen. And she talks about crushing this rebellion of elves and stuff like that. You get another perspective, and you're like,
right.
oh, shit, she's kind of a bad guy, but we liked her.
And you've seen the elves, and they're nice people. They definitely are not like monsters to be crushed, and like Calanthe is the one responsible for that. And during, again, another great episode, the one with the banquet, she's just a real fucking shit to the man that her daughter loves and who is, a victim of circumstance.
Hedgehog Knight. I love Hedgehog Knight.
Was Hedgehog Knight by rights, not just like, I don't know what the law of surprise would count as, but, sort of like by custom, granted the thing that he's asking for, but also, I already forgot Calanthe's daughter's name, but she loves him, and she's just shitty about it. But like, you don't hate Calanthe, like you maybe hate her a little bit, but you get why she's doing what she's doing, and you understand that being a queen involves being kind of an awful person sometimes, because you have to like look out for a whole nation of people and protect. And
then beyond that, she's also, basically slaughtering civilians if they're elves, right? So, something unambiguously evil.
She's a terrible person, but you sympathize and you understand and even like her a little bit. It's The Witcher is so good about not being afraid to show people who you might otherwise like doing things that are objectively bad. Geralt does things that are objectively bad. Maybe not on screen, but he has done things that are objectively bad, and he does things that are real gray area and not in like the fun, Malcolm Reynolds shooting a guy in the head type of way, but like, maybe this wasn't the right decision, but you understand why Geralt did what he did. And I think that's something that a lot of fantasy fails to grapple with. Everybody's a good guy, everybody's a bad guy. When they try to do something gray, it kind of falls flat, but The Witcher really does a good job with this.
Yeah, I also think that while on its head, some people might be like, oh, The Witcher, it seems like a low fantasy world. Look at all these peasants and stuff like that. It actually is, I would never classify The Witcher as low fantasy or low magic fantasy.
Oh no, it is incredibly high fantasy.
We've got dryads with their own magical kingdom. Yes. The wizards live for 500
years.
There's
of sorcerers everywhere. I mean, there's a lot of sorcerers out there.
Let's talk about wizards and sorcerers for a second. Can we talk about wizards and sorcerers here, Rob? I've been dying to tell you about wizards and sorcerers. Listen, it's a conspiracy. They're in charge of everything. I think that makes a lot of sense. No one realizes it but the wizards and sorcerers, but they're in charge.
That's literally what I was going to say. It makes perfect sense. Oh, of course they have a secret society where they just keep everybody poor, and that's why they've got a fucking sorcerer in every royal court to like influence things. And like there's no suggestion that they like use mind control on kings, because they don't fucking have to, but they could. You don't know that at no point they have ever like literally put their hands on the scale to like make sure that the world stays shitty so they can stay in charge.
But most of the time they don't, because it's easier to control things through the regular ways.
Exactly. And they can create these insane illusions and live these lives of like grandeur and opulence and
sexy dresses and leathers.
Yeah, when Geralt first meets Yennefer, she's like got a fucking, sex orgy going on because she's bored. Yes. So, and also I think this is why Yennefer is like a really good character, because she's like, oh great, I have everything, but like this is still pretty boring, right? Like I have achieved sort of like the top or like the pride of place in the sorcerer hierarchy. She's the only one who's not satisfied with the status quo, right? She's not happy to just live a life of power and
research one new spell every 100 years, which is what the wizards are like. Oh, we're devoted to magic. We got to figure out a couple new spells, right? That's their goal. That's all they care about.
It's never like explicitly stated, but you can tell, oh, of course the reason the world is shit and, everyone lives like a dirt peasant is because the sorcerers have the power to change it and like it the way that it is. I think it's like heavily implied that this is a world that is just rich with magic, but the people who have control over it make sure that it stays in the hands of a very few. It is a
Tisea, by the way, great sort of supporting character. I think the payoff of her character arc in the next season or two will be incredible.
Matt, let me ask you a question, because I actually don't know this. So maybe you can help me. So at the very second or last episode, I don't remember exactly which one, when they're going to go fight Niflheim, not Niflheim. Nilfgaard, right? They're going to that castle. Why do they take boats? Why do the sorcerers take boats to get there?
To get to the...
Remember, there's that scene. They're all in the boat, like rowing, like all the.
Yes.
Yennefer has like gathered all like 50 sorcerers together to like fight, and to get there. They get into boats. Why don't they just take a port?
Unclear. Aretuza is an island. Maybe they're saving their mana points. I guess.
Okay. I just didn't know if there was like a canonical reason for why they wouldn't just portal.
Yeah, I think in the books they do. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't. Right. But
okay.
Yeah, I
thought that was weird. I want to make sure I wasn't alone in thinking that was weird.
I think the way that wizards are explained and sort of rule the world from the shadows, but not too heavy-handedly, is a great thing. And then it's implied that almost anyone maybe could become a wizard, right? If you work at it.
Yeah, at the end it kind of is, because there's a bunch of rich kids. I mean,
it's implied that maybe
some
of them won't make the cut and they'll be turned into eels.
But it does seem like some of them will. Yeah. So maybe it's not really about, like, it's partially about natural ability, but I don't know, given enough time and attention, maybe anybody could like learn magic. Maybe the whole like eel thing is just a way to artificially inflate the selectivity of the wizard college.
Listen, absolutely Matt, could.
The best way to create real diversity and inclusion in wizard colleges would be to remove the testing system entirely.
Listen, I'm a Aretuza truther at this point. Toss a coin to your Witcher. I'm thinking loose change here, Rob. Loose change. So here, I wanted to talk about Nilfgaard and the sort of invasion.
Blaviken was an inside job, Matt.
Darling, darling, walk a while with me. Oh, you got so much, so much, so much.
I want to talk about Nilfgaard and the sort of invasion in the evil empire. In the books, Nilfgaard is kind of an evil empire, but honestly, they're just an empire. They're not actually like, they slaughter people when they invade, but it's admitted that every country does that when they invade, right? There's nothing particularly evil about them other than their sort of different religion.
The games do the same thing too. They are not like sympathetic, but they aren't portrayed as being any like
worse,
more evil. Yeah, in fact, I think the real villain of The Witcher is somebody else entirely, not Nilfgaard. But But they are definitely portrayed as the evil empire
in the show.
The show.
They've got the black armor. Cahir murders everyone. The sort of the agent guy.
They got a weird guy who like eats flesh to like. I don't know, they like destroy mages to like cast spells, and it's like pretty unambiguously evil, which is fine. It's interesting because at the very end, the sorcerer, I've forgotten her name, the sorcerer who ends up in Nilfgaard, gives like
Fringilla.
Fringilla. That's a good name. Makes some like pretty interesting and compelling points about like why.
Oh, you love the names in this. Vilgeforce of Rogefeld.
I actually do love them. I think they're great. I think they're incredible. Gives some like pretty compelling points about like why Nilfgaard isn't like uniquely evil, which are undercut by the fact that she had just like turned two of her friends into like dust
to make a catapult or something.
Yeah. So
nah,
not
great.
Not like the most subtle of approaches to the whole.
But see, the other thing about Nilfgaard in the books, I'm not sure if this is true in the video games, is that unlike in the kingdoms where the main story takes place. Nilfgaards promote, at least on the surface, greater equality for other humanoids, for elves, dwarves, and gnomes, so much so that in the books, Nilfgaard is able to recruit basically insurgent elves and dwarfs to basically become what the northern kingdoms call terrorists and help them invade.
Right.
I don't know if they'll get into that in the show or not. And then that brings up the question of racism in fantasy and how good a job does this story do of doing it. We've talked about this a little bit before.
I think it does a great job, and I'll tell you why. because there are people of color playing humans and wizards
and elves
and whatnot, and elves, and nobody comments on that, because why the fuck would it matter? So that, I think, makes it entirely understandable and reasonable and functional within the story to have people be super racist against elves. Because it distinguishes it makes a clean break from real life racism by contrasting them so directly.
And here's the other thing I would comment based on the books and I think the show, with just a few exceptions. For example, dwarves and gnomes love to geek out over metallurgy, right? And elves would prefer to live in sort of a more, in their old homelands that they've been dispossessed. The elven and dwarf characters are basically indistinguishable from humans in their basically morality and in the basic way they think and talk, because they're all very much the same. And I appreciate that.
So let's talk about our big
do it.
takeaways. What have you got?
So I think one of my favorite stories that was added from the second book, The Hunt for the Dragon, was great. It highlights a great use of dwarves, which were always fun. I think the importance of some background about Istrid, if they include a story with no spoilers here, called A Grain of Truth, that really sets up Yennefer as an independent character of Geralt, will be super satisfying as long as they include this story that includes both Yennefer, Istrid, and Geralt in the second season. Another big takeaway is just great use of supporting characters. Cahir, Tissia, Calanthe, Mousesack the Druid. Love Mousesack.
What a name.
And then my other big takeaway for Dungeon Masters is, guess what? In your world, you don't have to have this unified magic system where all wizards are people who have this spark of chaos and stuff like that. You can easily make room in your setting for lots of other things, like druids, for example, that also have magical powers.
My big takeaway, so there's a lot, we've talked a lot about the world and how well it works, and my big takeaway I want to talk a bit about how to use this when running a campaign. So one of the things that I liked about this show is that the stories include people from wildly different levels of competency, especially in combat. Jaskier is the big standout here, but Jaskier is, maybe useful is the wrong word, but is an important part of every story. And if, for example, you were playing in a campaign and it included Geralt and Yennefer and Jaskier, and it played out like one of these episodes, your Jaskier player would not feel especially useless or done over by. They would still have something to do and they would still have fun. This is probably not easy to accomplish in Dungeons and Dragons
Absolutely.
5th edition, but it does demonstrate, I think, that you can tell these stories, and not everybody, you don't have to tell a story that's the A-team, right? Not everybody has to have a combat specialty to tell a useful role-playing game,
right?
TTRPG.
The addendum
tale.
there has to be that you can't play a system that includes hour-long combats, as D&D often does, right? It has to be a system where combats are resolved in 5 minutes.
Right.
Like Powered by the Apocalypse, some of them. Burning Wheel, for example.
Burning Wheel combats actually can drag out
okay.
long if you do them. If you do, there's more than one ways. They can be quite quick if you are, depending on how you do it. Savage Worlds would probably work too. Combats are usually over pretty quickly. a player. So if you did have like a Geralt and a Jaskier in a 5th edition campaign, the Jaskier might feel useless because combats take up so much of the game. But if your main concern and if you're trying to tell a different type of story, I think the Witcher is just such a great example of how to tell a fantasy story where it's not like the original model is the Fellowship of the Ring, right? Everybody can fight. Everybody's got like a different weapon and combat specialty, and we all love that. We all love to be a part of a team of warriors, but I love the Witcher as a contrast because it's like, here's a bard and here's an ungodly powerful wizard and a witcher and some just like regular dude with a sword, and they're all part of the story.
Here's my takeaway for writing your campaigns and adventures is the show and Andrew Sapkowski does a great job of doing a sort of fairy tale with a twist, right?
Yeah.
Or a realistic fairy tale. So, the story of the Striga, for example, a cursed princess, or the story of a, knight slaying a dragon, right? Mm-hmm. As in the story about the dragon, right? What a great twist, right? In fact, the dragon is part of their party, etc., all that fun stuff. So I think these are great ways to plan out a short adventure.
It's great to subvert expectations, and The Witcher does it at every turn. The monsters are never who you expect them to be. It's never as simple as just go and kill a monster. Even in like the very beginning of the first episode, what's her face? Milken says, Kiki more useful. Do population
control.
Even though it's a hideous, bog-dwelling, many-limbed spider monster. So it's good to subvert expectations, and The Witcher does a great job of that.
Rob, the world of The Witcher compared to what's in the TTRPG and what many might assume is pretty big. For example, Rob, are gnomes part of the world of The Witcher? Do you know?
Are you asking me? I have no idea.
Yes, they are. Here's another question. Are psionics part of the world of The Witcher?
I don't know, though it includes mutants, so maybe? I don't know.
In fact, they are. Later on in the books, there's a character who is just a psionic, and it is, at least in the English translation, specifically referred to as that. So if you're one of those DMs who's like, maybe I don't want this in my campaign, look at the world of The Witcher. It also has psionics, right? They're incredibly rare, but...
So that's our takeaway. The Witcher, we like it. You should watch it. It's good.
Any hopes for the second season?
I'm not familiar with the source material, though I'm thinking about going and reading it. So I don't have any like specific expectations. I would be very happy with if they just keep up the quality and do more of the same. I'm interested in everybody's story. I want to keep seeing them. My main hope is that Jaskier comes back. I know he will.
Oh yeah,
I know he will, but I was sad that Geralt was mean to him, and then he went away for a few episodes. That was sad.
You might get more of that. I mean, Geralt is.
I know that's how it works, but like I liked Jaskier. Just bring him back. More Dandelion is all I'm asking for here.
My hope is that as they move forward, right, the first season basically sets up the plot of okay, our main characters are coming together finally, right? Specifically Ciri and Geralt, is I hope that they continue to do flashbacks to some of the wonderful short stories of Geralt solves a problem, slays a monster, etc., into the future seasons.
Yeah, so, I do want to see more monsters. It's not like there weren't enough monsters, but I would love to see like a really like more monster-heavy episodes, right? Geralt is hunting or fighting a particularly scary monster.
As the second season goes forward, I would, love to continue, whether it's in flashback or some other storytelling device, some of the Geralt slays a monster, solves a problem from some of the other short story collections. The last thing I wanted to say in hopes is that they continue sort of playing up, I think, the true strength of Geralt as a character is that he is heroic because he recognizes that, monsters act often out of instinct and stuff like that. But, right, true badness lies among people, and that he recognizes, like was demonstrated with the short story with the elves, right, that, we're not so different in that one of the ultimate scene, which without any context is not spoilers, is that and I think this is really great coming from a Polish author, is that Geralt is willing to sacrifice himself in order to stop a pogrom of elves, dwarves, and gnomes living in a human city. That's his ultimate act of heroicism, and that's his journey.
Is a practical person and not a kind-hearted person, but he is a hero, right? Because he acts carefully and he treats everybody the same, and he doesn't ever allow his. I think this is the decisions that he makes are always informed by what's really going on. He doesn't act rashly. It's very admirable, and it's fun to watch. He's a good character. It's totally great that Henry Cavill can't act because it's perfect for The Witcher. Great casting. All right, let's answer some mail.
So our first letter comes from Aaron. Aaron writes, Matt and Rob, thank you for introducing me to the Traitor of Cormorant. I was floored by the entirety of this novel, but the final punch in the gut, a punch that was telegraphed, a punch that she said she would throw, really knocked me to the ground. Which brings me to the point of this email. Thank you. I've gotten so much from your podcast that I could not get from any other published game material. Most of all, thank you for making dungeon mastering something that is less intimidating and more manageable. I've suffered a lot through DMing Elemental Evil in my first campaign since AD&D, and it just wasn't fun. After I started listening to DM of None, my approach changed. I think this has also helped my partner come into dungeon mastering. I run one campaign and she runs another. We found ways to talk about what we're doing a lot better, and I think it has helped her feel less intimidated by running a game. We listened to several episodes before our first adventure. We listened to a lot of your advice. We held a session 0, built more interesting characters without using the cliche with a twist method, and she keeps a post-game journal after every session. She's having a lot of fun dungeon mastering, and she seems more comfortable than I did during my first campaigns. Now we listen to your podcast and chat about what we can use and what will be fun. This is all to say that we are fans. I love what y'all are doing and hope that y'all keep it up for as long as it's fun. Be well in the new year and keep rolling those dice, Aaron.
Aaron, thank you so much for writing. I really, really appreciate it. I'm glad that you have found value in what we do, and I'm really glad that we were able to demystify some things for you and for your partner. That is what we want to do, because it is challenging, but it is not impossible, and anybody with the right tools can be a DM, and that's what we want. It's a great, wonderful thing to do. I'm just tickled pink.
Thanks again, Aaron. We appreciate it.
This one is from Lance. Hello. I'm a long-time listener, and I've never had the honor of DMing my own campaign, but I am currently working on a homebrew setting based off of a beloved series of novels. I'm currently trying to decide how similar I want my setting to be to the novels, and one of the problems I keep trying to figure out is the lack of magic in the novels. So my question is, how would you attempt a low magic setting in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition?
Well,
Lance, you are bold
Lance?
to ask us this question.
Yes.
I respect your tenacity and your approach. Matt, you have some thoughts on this?
Well, one way to attempt this is, honestly, don't. Dungeons & Dragons is built to be a basically high to medium magic setting, right? Most player characters have magical powers. It's probably not the best game system to run a low magic setting.
In my opinion, 5th edition works poorly as a low magic setting. Much of the just fundamental bones of the product are built on the idea that magic is at least common.
Widely
if not
available
like,
to the
widely.
heroes, at least.
Yes.
Right.
So if...
An alternative, you could use Savage Worlds and limit the magic the players are using. You could use an old school Revolution clone like Labyrinth Lord or something like that. Zui Handler is a little more low magic.
There are hacks out there that work okay, but 5th edition is not a great system for this. Here's 2 pieces of advice that you didn't ask for. One, I would, as whatever you're thinking about doing for your homebrew campaign, I would depart even further from your beloved series of novels. Use them as a kernel of an idea, and then start changing everything that you can while staying true to the theme and idea and feel of the novels. Change everything else. This is a better way to challenge yourself, and it will create a richer, less derivative homebrew setting. I am not criticizing your starting point, because I have done the exact same thing for many, if not all of my homebrew settings. You have to acknowledge that what you love about the novels is sort of the theme and feel behind it, and then you have to strike out on your own. So that's my first piece of advice. My second is don't bother with a low magic setting. If you must, here's a basic bare bones suggestion. Contrive a way for magic to be common or readily available to your adventuring party and to very few others.
That was exactly the piece of advice I was going to give, right? Players have magic, maybe the rest of the world doesn't. Because they're special heroes. That's fine.
Special.
That's the easiest, least amount of work way to make D&D 5e work in a low magic setting. The players have magic.
Yeah.
Most other people do not.
That I think is the easiest way to do it. There are others. You can absolutely try to limit magic. You can homebrew your own things. You can prevent your players from playing as casting classes, but frankly, these are going to be unsatisfying, and I don't think they're going to work very well. So, just that's my advice. Honestly, I don't want to discourage you from doing a low magic setting if it's exciting to you. I think you're going to want to do a different system than 5th edition.
Yes.
So, best of luck, and good for you on getting started.
All right. Here's a question from Ryan. Guys, are you familiar at all with Griffins and Gargoyles, a fictional D&D variant in the show Riverdale that uses the negative D&D tropes of being very cultish and wildly religious?
So I have not watched Riverdale. However, I am intimately familiar with the CW catalog of television shows. So I am familiar with this particular thing. So what I have heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that Riverdale includes a major plot point. I think even an entire arc of one of the seasons. Riverdale is Sexy Archie, right?
Yes.
This is
you're not wrong here.
Okay.
Sexy Archie, Sexy Jughead.
Sexy Jughead, that's right. Matt and I are not clear. Matt has suggested that possibly Riverdale is in the greater Sabrina universe.
Yes, I've seen Sabrina, and they are connected.
They are connected,
both in the comics and in the TV show.
Are they really? Okay,
yeah.
So then it makes...
Sabrina was a guest character in Archie comics way back in the day.
So Ryan, I would actually love for you to tell us specifically what happens, but as I understand it, Griffins and Gargoyles, there's actual magic and definitely actual cult activity and murders and all the things that we talked about in Mazes and Monsters, except not the mad ramblings of Tom Hanks's diseased mind, just really actually happening. So I'm not opposed to watching Riverdale. I'm definitely not too good to watch a TV show for teens. I just have I'm so far behind on television as it is that it's going to be a bit before I can get to it. But I would love to hear about what Griffins and Gargoyles, how it manifests in Riverdale. What I understand is that it's actually quite important, which I think is just so funny. I've been thinking a lot about the Satanic Panic lately, Matt, because I am running Descent to Avernus, and the Devils and Demons are called Devils and Demons, but I totally had forgotten that they were for a while
Tanare and
Batezu, because whoever came after Gygax was no more of that Devils and Demons shit, because they didn't want mothers to get mad at them. Anyway, I do love that we can now have just like straight up Satanic Panic stuff in television and nobody cares, or nobody
For fun.
Nobody who has any power cares. I mean, fuck off, Tipper Gore and friends. You know, you have no power here.
Yeah. Maybe we have to watch some episodes of Riverdale that
We'll
feature griffins and gargoyles.
We'll try to do selective watch of Riverdale with some griffins and gargoyles episodes. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for letting us know about this.
Yes, thank you, Ryan.
I've heard about this, and I'm definitely curious. So we'll check it out. All right, our next one is from Ruben. Ruben writes, "Hello, I am Ruben, a new DM from Mexico, and I have been a big fan of your show since I discovered it last year. First of all, I wanted to thank you for your great show and very helpful advice. You have been my teacher since I started DMing for a group of friends and my wife since August of last year, for one night every week in a row.
Woohoo!
So I guess I'm doing a good job." Yes,
Yep.
Ruben, you are. You're doing a great job. Congratulations. Anyway, I have a couple of questions for you guys. As a native Spanish speaker, it is a challenge to know everything in English because of how the modules and rulebooks are written and then running everything in Spanish. So any advice on how you deal with content that is not in the language you speak, like a book, TV show, movie, music, etc.? Ooh, this is a good question. Let's answer this first, and then we'll get to your second question, Ruben. Ruben, this is a really good question that I'm not sure that we are very well equipped to answer because we are both English speakers and most of our source material is in English. However,
I mean, unfortunately, only the three core rule books are the only things that have been translated into Spanish, right? So any of the other modules and supplements are English only, which sucks ass.
It's not great. I have. Yeah, it sucks. Matt and I have both done graduate work in history, which means Matt, did you have to do any foreign language study? I had to do a little bit, so I actually did read some. I did have to read some source material in Spanish. Matt, I'm not sure what your language was.
It was also Spanish, guess what? I mean, the answer was right. It was hundreds of hours of work, right?
Yeah, the answer was I sucked
which is
at it,
something
and
you don't have time to do as a dungeon master.
So Ruben, I'm deeply sympathetic to your plight, and the answer is that it just takes time. What I would recommend, I guess. I mean, what I would recommend is basically the same thing that I would recommend for somebody who's short on time, is just sort of just make clear to your players like what your limitations are and plan your sessions accordingly. If you have to railroad a bit in case it means having to allowing you to stay within the material that you are familiar with. It's not ideal, but until you have the time to go through all of the books and all of, the campaigns you're trying to approach, I think that's your best option.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that you can do, I think, which is just to sort of play to what you have figured out, right? If for example, it seems like you might be running a published module, since you mentioned modules in the question, right? Which is to go through and one of the parts that sticks out to you and makes sense to you, right? Make that the core part of your campaign, and the rest of it, sketch out from what you know, right? Because we've talked about this before. When you're running a published module, is you basically, at least I think the best way to run them, even for a native speaker, is to read through the module, learn it, and then run it as if you have created it. So if the players do something unexpected, you know how to respond, right? Yeah. And I guess your approach should be to do that, but knowing that you won't fully understand everything, but run from what you know.
Yeah, I know this is going to be
make
challenging
up the rest
since you're a relatively new DM, but honestly, your best option is probably to get comfortable improvising more, because you can improvise easily in your own language material that you're familiar with or comfortable with, and that's its own challenge, but it might be better than trying to make sure that you know everything within a written module. Which sort of relates to your second question is, do you think it is the responsibility of the player to know what his or her character can do and how? And yes. So Ruben, by my own admission, I am very forgiving with my players on this point because many of them are new, and so I sometimes hold their hand, but I think the bare minimum that you should expect of your players is that they can know what their character does and how, and they should be able to say, on their turn, I'm going to make an attack action, I'm going to cast a spell, I'm going to roll to sneak.
This being said, right, make sure that you as a dungeon master are, doing your best to help your players learn their character, right? If you know you have a player character who doesn't really fully understand, let's say they're a barbarian and they don't understand how rage works, or they're a spellcaster and they don't understand how to track their spells, make it your goal to sort of walk them through that during the next session, so that from here on out, they'll understand how that one mechanic works, right? I find chunking how their character works is the best way. And by chunking, I mean dividing it up into very small parts and then making sure they learn that one small part each week.
Thank you, Ruben, for writing in. I hope this is helpful. Good luck.
And mucho gusto. Nice to meet you, Ruben. Thank you for
very much
for
so.
Writing in.
Saludos to you as well. And yeah, good luck with your future DMing.
Yes. Our final letter comes from is, I think, our first example of a campaign doctor letter. Someone was asking us for advice on their campaign and what to do. Here we go. Are you ready, Rob?
I'm ready.
Jason writes, "Hi, love the podcast. I'm running an extended Lost Mines of Phandelver campaign. I have had an unknown villain still steal the flame to the Spellforge while the party decided to long rest after beating what they thought was the last thing in the Water Echo Cave."
I like this. I'm just going to jump in here, Jason. I like this.
Yeah.
I'm not super familiar with Phandelver, but I like it. I don't like it. I don't like to punish my players for taking a long rest, but if they take it at an inappropriate time, I do like to add a little complication just to demonstrate that there are consequences and that time does advance. So I like this a lot.
They found an old diary of one of the wizards who helped create the Forge of Spells, and it had a map that will lead them to an old temple. Inside, I have 5 maze paths, each representing a different element that only one player can enter, hopefully giving each player a chance to shine and use all their skills to solve their situations and obtain an elemental shard. I'm having a hard time coming up with some environmental hazards that are fun and challenging for water, fire, earth, lightning, and air. I'm trying to avoid combat in the maze as there's an ooze monster that's found their way in and is trying to get to that sweet, sweet magic, and they may encounter him before. But if not, after for sure. I have ideas. Okay, so we have to help Jason come up with individual encounters for each player. I guess they enter this sort of shard maze, and there's some sort of gate or something that only one person can enter.
So here's my suggestion, Jason.
Yeah.
And this is going to make this a little bit harder for you, but I think that your gut instinct of environmental hazards is very easy and good to start with, and I think you should build around that. But so maybe you've got a room full of fire and an underwater tunnel and a crushing rock zone and lightning floors and a gusting a room that is just full of hurricane winds. But I would add a way to solve the puzzle that doesn't involve any skills or combat whatsoever if the player or the character is clever enough. So perhaps, and this is going to be a heavy lift and we're probably not going to be able to come up with everything right away, but perhaps if the fire zone, they know the right words to a riddle, or they bring in the right object, this would without knowing that much about Lost Mines of Phandelver or what your campaign has gone through so far, it would be hard to come up with something. But
okay, here's, I think, to build on that, a way to make this a little more manageable and interesting for your players. When they go to this temple, instead of having 5 maze paths that represent a different element that only one person can enter, and they're like, well, I guess I'll take air and you'll take earth, have a central location and basically have some writing on the ground that your players can translate that says, to preserve these elemental shards and keep them from bringing them together, they can only be removed from their bindings all at the same time. And the players are like, oh, okay, there's 5 of us. That means we're each going to have to go try and retrieve these shards at the same time, but have this central place be a place where they can sort of see what the general challenge is around each shard. So the party can plan, well, who would be best? Oh, we see the air shard is way up high around a bunch of, you can only get to it by a bunch of floating rocks or something like that. That's got to be the player who's good at jumping or can get a fly spell. The earth one is pinned under a heavy boulder, so they can talk and plan out and actually decide. Let them do the work for you.
Yeah. So this is a good question. It depends kind of on your group, but you can have one, like Matt said, one be a strength-based challenge, right? They have to lift a heavy rock. One be an acrobatics challenge. They have to jump from one thing to another. One can just be like a flat fighting. Maybe there's some sort of, maybe the actually, I'm not coming up with like a just good combat encounter for one of these.
Yeah,
so
you might want to stay away from combat encounters if the
that's
others
right,
can
never
be
mind.
solved faster.
Jason told me that he didn't want to do combat anyway because there's an ooze master in there, which is a great type of villain. So, but something intelligence focused, right? Like a riddle that they can solve.
Right. Your idea of, he also mentioned pulsing electric floors with timers, like sort of something for a thief or an acrobatic character to,
You could also have one,
lasers.
The water one might be good for somebody who's just tough, somebody with a high constitution score, right? They just have to hold their breath for longer than a certain amount of time. That's not like a particularly exciting one, but if somebody
it's exciting in that it gives the other players a timer. This guy's
right.
I'm holding my breath here, can you not?
Right.
I still haven't reached, I still haven't touched my thing, I failed my check. And they're like, all right, are we gonna all have to go back out? And then the important point is to create a central room where the players can clearly see the choices and the consequences, right?
Matt has a good point here. Give them all the information and then let them make their own decisions. By all means, have just one person per path, but let them know exactly what they're getting into and let them be like, okay, great. This is what we have to do. This is how we're going to do it.
Right. And they'll feel, if they're able to accomplish it, they'll feel really good about themselves and that, like, oh, wow, look at all these skills we have covered. And if they fail the first couple times, right, it's probably something where they can come back in and, retry.
Try again.
Or you can always make it more complicated in that the ooze master is watching them. And since this ooze master is only one person, right, maybe it's waiting for them to remove the 5 shards, which is the one thing it can't do. So that's maybe the complication is that they come back out and, the person who's been holding their breath is like, lost some of is exhausted from doing it. It makes the fight a little more complicated. The person who went through the fire got scorched a little bit and now the ooze master's here to steal what they have in a classic Indiana Jones, like that one archaeologist Belloc. Yeah.
Belloc. That belongs in a museum. And so do we.
Yes.
So, hopefully that's helpful, Jason. Good question. I love the idea behind this encounter. Without knowing more about your group, we can't really give you specifics, but I think like a skill challenge for each element is just fine, especially if you give them all the information, like Matt said, and maybe a central room with some like clear ideas of what they'll have to do to reach the end of each maze is going to make them feel very accomplished once they beat it.
Yeah.
So thanks for writing in, and I hope that's helpful. So yeah, everybody, a doozy of an episode.
Toss a coin to your podcasters, or toss us a line at dmofnone@gmail.com.
Or add us on Twitter at dmofnone.
Or call at 774-203-4629, the Dungeon Master hotline.
And keep rolling them dice.
High up on the mountain, from whence it came. He wiped out your past, God kicked in his chest. He's a friend of humanity, so give him the rest. That's my epic tale. Our champion brother defeated the villain. Now pour him some ale.